G'day and welcome to today's topic, which is we're going to be talking about dynamic range. And this might be of interest to any of you who have taken photos, probably most of us, that over the time we take a photo and we just don't capture what the eye sees. So first thing we probably want to do is explain to you why this happens. Our eyes are very similar to the camera. We've got sensitivity, we've got a lens, we've got an iris, we record images. The processor that's in here is obviously not the processor that's in here. This is a far more advanced system. It's had a lot more years to develop itself, and this thing here is relatively new. So if we have a look at our images and we think, why aren't they coming out the same way? One of the reasons is to do with dynamic range. Now, dynamic range, put simply, is the range of detail you can see from everything in the shadow area right through to everything in the light area of your photos. So if you've ever had an image where part of the image has been too bright and it's rendered as pure white with no detail, that means that that brightness is outside of the dynamic range of our camera. We might see it with our eyes, but the camera can't see it. Now, just to explain dynamic range, you can adjust your camera so that it can see that type of detail in that bright light, but you might not, as a sacrifice, be able to see the detail that's in the shadow area. So just to put it into an analogy for you that will hopefully help you understand. Think about when you're lying in bed, middle of the night, you wake up, you think, oh, very thirsty, let's go to the kitchen. So you get up, you open your eyes, actually you do that before you get up, you walk around the house and you can see in almost pitch black, in that very low light. We've also got an ISO, or an ASA as it was called, sensitivity in our eyes. So we adjust, we've turned up our sensitivity so that we can see in that level of brightness. So that allows us to render detail in our vision of all the darker areas. So as you walk through the house, you know where all the walls are, the doors are, just with the ambient light. The ambient light might be something, light leaks from a street light, it could be from an LED on a computer. It's very low light, but we can see detail and navigate through the house. We approach the kitchen, and the first thing we do is, we do it every time, bathroom light, kitchen light, turn the light on, and next thing you're blinded momentarily. Our eyes need a time to adjust. We adjust our internal ISO, so we need a little bit of time to adjust before we can see anything in the brighter areas. It's too bright, we do what the camera does. The camera drops its aperture or its iris down. Our eyes have already been put into shock, they're probably down as far as they can go. We further squint because we need to block out the light. Once our eyes adjust, it's great. We're able to see everything in the lighter areas. The problem there is, if you wanted to see somewhere in the back of the cupboard, if it was quite dark, you might not be able to see the detail, because now our eyes have adjusted for brighter light. The darker areas that we could have seen before are now outside of our dynamic range. So we've got quite a wide dynamic range. If you look around you, you can see in shadow areas, you can see in highlight areas. But take a photo with your camera, and what happens? You end up with areas that you can see that are in shadow get rendered as almost black. Now, again, as we leave the kitchen, we've had our glass of water and we go back to bed. We turn the light off, make a note of where all the obstacles are in our path, because we know as soon as we turn that light off, we can't see in the dark again until our eyes adjust. Rather than wait a couple of minutes until we can adjust, we just do the zombie walk and bang into every wall and door on the way back to the bedroom, lucky it's a soft landing. So that, in a nutshell, is dynamic range with our eyes, and the camera has an even narrower dynamic range, which means that it can't see things that are in the bright parts and extreme dark parts in the one photo. There's a bit what we call clipping either side, so you'll either lose detail in the shadow area, which just means it'll be rendered darker or black and you don't get to see it, or if you've brightened up the shadow parts, it means that sometimes the brighter parts will go off the edge of the scale and just be rendered as white. This is particularly evident when you take photos on bright sunny days, and you'll hear a lot of photographers say, I never shoot at 12 midday when the sun's out, the light's too harsh. And that's the reason why. It's very extreme light and it produces very harsh, heavy shadows, and the camera can't take it all in. It's brilliant for black and white photos because we like the white and we like the black and the separation between them, but for colour photography it's a nightmare. So hopefully that's helped you to understand a little bit more about dynamic range. The term HDR, or high dynamic range, is starting to become a real buzzword and arty word in the photography world, but all it refers to is dynamic range expansion. It just means that we've got a broader dynamic range with our camera capture that will hopefully give us something a little more like the eye sees. It can be overdone, it can be really heavily processed and give a real artistic gothic look to the picture, but put into cameras today like the 5D Mark III, you will see that you can expand your dynamic range. What it does, it takes one photo where it exposes for the shadows, another one for the highlights, and then one in the middle. And it combines the three images together. You've got to keep the camera very steady. And it combines them together and takes out all the parts that were clipped, so all the parts that were rendered as black or white owing to that dynamic range, and it includes them and blends the image together to produce something a little bit closer to what the eye sees. Now the downside is you lose a bit of contrast, but you know, it's cause and effect and it's down to your shot objective. So if you see it on your camera, give it a go. That's what it's doing. It attempts to just try and resolve more shadow detail and highlight detail all in the one frame. This bit of information is hopefully the first of many clips that I hope to be putting up for you. Hope you found it informative. If you've got any questions or any comments about what's being covered, please write to me, and yeah, I look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for watching.